Alright, here on the bench we have the tachometer drive disassembled. We have our camshaft. So if you can see, I've cut a length of the end of the tacho drive off, and this is where the seal would have gone and your actual drive unit. Pulled that out. I have cut a piece of aluminum here, kind of chamfered the edge, cleaned this thing up for welding, and that's going to fit in, maybe, that is going to fit in there like so. We're going to weld that, and that'll just be done. We're going to not block off the oil hole here, and this is meant to lubricate the tacho drive, but we're just going to leave that exposed and let that oil run back down to the front of the cam. And even though the cam is oiled from the front here, we're just going to leave it exposed anyway. On the cam itself, I did hack the end off of it. We did it carefully, and then we smoothed the ends. I am still going to polish the cam lobes and stuff like that, but I did this so it doesn't protrude from the end, and where the seal would normally go, I've done the same thing as on the tack drive, and just made a block off tab, and that's going to get welded again there. So as of now, I'm going to set up the welder, start burning this stuff in. Shouldn't be too bad. And then polish the cam, and tomorrow you can probably start putting this thing back together. I actually just got a shipment of gaskets and stuff like that, all the gaskets and seals I'm going to need for this. And today I took some time and some long neglected parts washer or solvent tank I went ahead and cleaned out, so the thing's got fresh solvent in it, and no goo in the bottom. It was pretty bad. It was nasty. So anyway, we're fresh now. We're ready to go. So I'm gonna get to work. Smoothed out, ready to go. I'll probably paint this just because. Ugh, I hate polishing in here. It just makes such a mess. But gotta do what we gotta do. The base circle of the cam, there was a little bit of not corrosion, but just you could tell it wasn't as shiny as the rest of the lobes. So I really wanted to focus on that area. Just clean that up, you know, eliminate wear where possible. So have the cam looking really good. For a CX cam, it's got kind of the normal amount of pitting, and otherwise it looks pretty good. I did take some JB Weld and right around the mechanical seal here, I just filled in some of the pits, so we're going to see how that does, just as an added safety precaution. But again, as you saw, we had to lop the end off the cam there for our electric fan conversion. But now I'm going to clean this thing up, make sure all the oil passages are clear in it, and we are ready for assembly very soon. Bam! Alright, we're ready to put the cam in, and all I have to do is go ahead and pre-lube everything. Going to make sure we get our thrust washer in the back of the block there, and then we can go ahead and throw this thing together. Also note, I'm doing this in an unorthodox fashion with aligning the cam and stuff like that. So, you know, this is not a how, this part at least is not a how-to. But we're gonna get this thing in there and do what we can. All right, got the Woodruff key lined up with our timing mark here, and now go ahead, put the little guide pin in the cam very carefully. Tight enough for now. And these two pins, or these two holes, they need to align basically with the water pump outlet here. There's a little timing mark here and an alignment mark here. It drives straight through the cam. So we need to rotate this that way. And this is going to be challenging. It will be challenging indeed, because we're going to have at least one valve spring open. Alright guys, I apologize, but I thought I was recording, but I was not. So anyway, at this point what I did is I took a piece of aluminum, rotated the cam where it needed to be so it was lined up, and then from there I took the gear, slid that on, and then adjusted it tooth by tooth within the chain until it was lined up, and then I could tighten the bolts and Loctite them and stuff, and then tighten the nut on the camshaft, and we're good to go. So again, sorry about that. Well, I thought I was recording, but we have the gear on, everything's lined up horizontal. You can see the little timing mark right there. You see a little timing mark right there. Right there. And then our Woodruff key is lined up right with the yellow paint mark there. Should be good to go. Alright, progress has been made. Got a wrench in the front of the engine here, and I've just been rolling it over a bunch of times, making sure everything moves fluidly, and then rechecking timing. So we have our marks all lined up in orientation that they need to be in. I went ahead and just put all of these adjusters just a finger tight. You know, we're going to readjust the valves before we first start this thing anyway, so as long as they're kind of just in the ballpark right now and everything's going to be working smooth, we're going to be good to go. So, as of now, I can start assembling the rear cover, put the stator in, and we will get this thing back together. Okay, we're looking at the rear cover here. Just I want to point out some details before reassembly. So this is the area that you guys hear about is the mechanical seal, and on the top side of this is the mechanical seal that keeps the coolant from going into the oil, and then on the back side is the camshaft rear oil seal. So you will notice right there is the weep hole. You want to make sure that's clean. You want to make sure this surface is as clean as possible. And the way we're going to drive in the seal, I'll show you here in a bit. You kind of have to make your own tools and get crafty, but you can see here, this is the old mechanical seal that came out of it. And we have what is referred to as the polo mint, and this is partly come apart. But there's also a piece on the back side that's still in the water pump propeller. And then you have your little thrust washer here. But this is the rear camshaft oil seal. I just have some numerous stuff down here, but we're going to be replacing all of this. And it's going to be all great and groovy, and we're not going to have any transfer of liquids in that spot. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start installing the mechanical seal, and to do this you either need the factory Honda install tool to drive it in square, or you can make your own. And I'll link below a Motofaction article. Check out that website. You can see kind of how they did it. But I'm using, you know, a random like cut up throttle tube, bunch of washers, spacers to kind of keep it all squared up and aligned. And before I do that, this particular mechanical seal came with no sealant on this section here, so I need to add some. I'm going to use some aviation liquid sealant, and we're going to make sure everything's clean up top. Then we're going to line it all up, drive it in. So let's get going. Now I've already cleaned the inside of this, so I'm going to just kind of set it in place so I don't have to touch it anymore. That should hang out there for a second. And this is just kind of a oddball little setup I've come up with to try to keep everything squared off. And the way I have this installer, I have it so it just you just kind of install it for like just a little bit, get it set up, and then I have to remove one piece on the back side here. And that's just to make sure I have the best chance of getting it square, you know, right off the bat. So I'm just pulling out kind of a guide. That's it right there. You can feel it seat. All right. Our freshly installed seal. Now to point out real quick, you remember we cleaned out our weep hole. So that little hole right there, you want to make sure there's nothing blocking it. If you used sealant, you know, you can get some on the back side, so you want to make sure that you don't have any in there. Just want to make sure it's clear. Alright, next up is the rear camshaft oil seal. So for that, just got another Honda seal here. You can see the part number there. This one's a lot easier to install. We're just going to use a big socket that's larger than the diameter of the seal. And you just drive it until it's flat with the surface there. So this is the shift shaft seal, common leak point on these. We're going to go ahead and install this. You can order this in either a 6 or a 7 millimeter, and if you go on Partzilla or whatever, I'll link that as well, but you can kind of pick out what you want. Doesn't really matter which one you get. And this one you can just drive all the way in. And also, you can change these while while on the bike or while the engine is assembled. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt, but you can do it. All right, looking good. All right, we have the rear cover ready to install. So I have a new gasket there, and I've just been kind of organizing all my stuff here. Do not forget your dowel pins. Also, new O-rings for the transfer tubes here. And then beyond that, you just have, make sure your hardware is cleaned. And this is the best opportunity you're going to have to chase any threads that might be kind of gunky, and then definitely make sure you blow them out and make sure they're dry. These are blind holes, and this isn't just applied to this bike, but this is anything with like a blind hole. If you have, let's say, oil residue or liquid in there, and you go to tighten a bolt down, you can actually crack that because you're building so much pressure with a liquid that can't be compressed. So just keep that in mind. I am going to use a little bit of 3-bond, just a tiny little film on probably both sides of the gasket on maybe the lower half here. And then we'll go ahead and stab this thing together. I'm just getting my bolts started right now, just so I have correct gasket alignment, and I'm not fighting it here in a second when I drive this thing home. All right, rear cover on. Some of you might notice my output shaft seal is missing. I know, it's in the mail, it's on the way here, and it can go in no problem. So anyway, just so you know. Okay, here we are. This thing is assembled. It's looking good. And as of now, I just need to kind of clean this thing up. The next episode you're going to see is on the electric fan I just got in this thing. It's going to be a good episode, so keep an eye out for that. Check the description below for all of the part sources for like gaskets and seals and stuff like that. And then definitely pick up a service manual. If you do not have one already, they're going to have full diagrams and torque values and the full process listed in detail on like how to do this stuff. So definitely have one of those if you are going to tackle this process on your own. If you haven't already, check out the previous episode here where we disassembled this thing. Look at some other videos on the channel. There's a lot of content on there. Subscribe if you do so feel inclined. I'd really appreciate it. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.